Good morning, many friends, distinguished guests. Let's not be so serious. It's a morning, and we are here to talk about how to do good and become better, right? Now, what I'm going to do today is to share with you what not to do and how not to follow the corporate governance code in the private sector entirely. You've got to pick and choose, right? One of the key things that I would want to discuss is the very existence of charities, whether you should work towards extinction, right? So that's something that I want all of us to think. Now, there are a few lessons that I think we all will have to learn together. It is not about charities or corporate boards. If you look at the world today, there's a growing emphasis on self-governance, right? The regulators know that no amount of regulations are going to prevent another fraud or another safety lapses. It's not just fraud, safety lapses. And we learn that in the governance of companies, whether it's listed companies or charities, the board plays a very important role in setting the culture, in creating the trust between the company and the stakeholders. So increasingly, you will hear these three words. Boards are expected to shoulder more responsibility, greater accountability, and you have to accept a world of greater transparency. I'm not sure whether you learned about the hairline cracks in the SMRT, right? We're trying to, and these are perfect example, right? The minister came out and said, we learned something. We should have been a lot more transparent. Honestly, there's nothing to hide. Rather than allow rumor to spread the way they are spread in the social media. And what Gerard said this morning is important for us to realize that we are living in a digital age. For those who watched the Clinton and Donald Trump debate, you know that while they're speaking, all of you are already watching, right? So there's nothing you can do today. So transparency is not something that you think that is good to have. I don't think you have a choice, right? Now, in July 2016, Stock Exchange actually commissioned an accounting firm, KPMG, to do a survey on the main board listed companies, 545 companies. You know, the main board listed companies have been asked to comply with the Code of Corporate Governance. The first code was released in 2005, and then they do an update in 2012. And the reason why Stock Exchange asked to do a survey on the 545 listed company is to look at whether these listed companies are using a checklist approach to tick and say, yes, I disclose something, I comply, or they're actually looking at the substance of those codes and diligently provide the quality of information to help the reader understand what they have been doing. Now, the results is very interesting. You will know that there are 4 areas that they look at. And you know that in the area of board matters, 49% did not disclose having directors serving beyond 9 years. And I was reading Business Times, Mr. David Jarrett was saying there are certain listed board, certain directors are serving for 30 years. Right? It's very, very long. Not that they are not valuable, but I think we need to really look at succession planning, and the independence element, whether the same people are objective and whether the same people are able to change and respond to a disruptive digital age. So these are the questions that we need to ask. 90% do not have a diversity policy. Now we learned a very painful lesson in the corporate world. Diversity is not about gender diversity, how many women on the board. It's about having the right mix of skills, right? Aviation companies get into trouble because the board of directors don't have people who understand aviation safety. SMRT get into trouble because their engineering expertise are not in the board to provide the guidance, right? BP, we're talking about a global company got into trouble because they believe that risk can be transferred to their subcontractors, right? So these are things that are getting us to think about the composition of the board and why you need to have the breadth and the depth of a wide range of skills to advise and the board, to make up the board, and with that diversity, board can make better informed decisions. The next thing about remuneration, I know this is a very touchy subject, and I attended the workshops conducted by MCCY, and many people say, hey, look, if I have to disclose in detail the remuneration paid to my highest executive, the worry is people will approach them. Some even say the worry is, I don't want to know people, I'm so underpaid. There are many reasons, all right? The same reasons apply to the corporate board, all right? And you realize that we still have a long way to go. 69% did not disclose remuneration of directors and CEO in dollar values. 52% did not disclose they had employees with remuneration exceeding $50,000 who were related to the directors or CEO, all right? And 70% did not disclose the remuneration of employees who were related to the directors or CEO in a band of $50,000. Again, a key area that we have to look at progress. The third area is accountability and audit. 47% did not disclose effectiveness of internal controls. 34% did not disclose adequacy of risk management. 55% did not disclose effectiveness of risk management. And then you have the areas of shareholders and stakeholders engagement. There are non-disclosure of the outcome of the shareholders meeting. Shareholders were not aware of the availability of the minutes of the meeting. Pause and think about how many of these are actually relevant to charities. Okay? Now, I was reading the Charities Corporate Governance Report for 2015, and the Minister, Lawrence Wong, said, right, many charities still think that accountability and transparency are good to have. And he said that it's time that we realize that for us to continue to help the poor and the underprivileged, the board must now change this mindset from good to have to must have, right? Accountability and transparency. Now, assuming that the board realized this, I'm going to share with you two case studies, IKEA. And this actually is something that Gerard alluded to just now, that when we are talking about internal controls, risk management, it's not about having thick policies and procedures. It's not about getting people to sign off and say, yes, I comply, right? And sign off the code of conduct and say, yes, I read the code of conduct, I've been a good boy, I've been honest. I think it's a lot more than that. And these two case studies illustrates the point that we are making. IKEA is a very well-known company. You want to talk about internal controls, there are plenty, right? You want to get into their procurement list, they do a check on the vendors before you can get into the their approved vendors list. They have very robust control procedures on procurement, safety. They have very good monitoring controls. In the corporate world, we call the 3 lines of defense. They have all these 3 lines of defense. But how come you have the head of the restaurant abusing the power and engage in corrupt practices? Now, the key point here is not about all these policies and procedures. The key point here is this. This is a person that has been well liked by many of its people. And this is a person, if you know to IKEA, you know that you like their chicken wings, right? Yeah, and it's very cheap, right? Yeah. This is a person that has been dishing out chicken wings in many kilos to all the Singaporeans, and they visited IKEA for the chicken wings. Now, when you have someone in that position, all the controls, and if that person wants to circumvent the controls, all the controls in the world will not be able to do it, right? He has used his power to make sure that the connected companies are inside the approved list. He has used his influence to make sure that the staff that is awarding the contracts award to the companies that he has an interest in, right? So the lesson learned here is you need to have what I call vigilance. And in fact, when we were looking at this case study, we realized that the second line of defense and the third line of defense are working. The second line of defense are your monitoring controls, where the finance control people pick up unusual purchases and also how come this particular suppliers have been supplying chicken wings at higher cost than the rest, okay? And they allow this very influential person to get away by that kind of standard response because they are very good. And there was no effort made to question and look into the details. The internal auditors also pick up that the margin has been eroding in the chicken wing sales, but again, they were willing to accept the answer that it is due to higher food costs. So the point I want to make here is it is not about having more policies and procedures. It's not about having more internal audit. It's about the employees themselves having the vigilance to question and to know something is not wrong. We got to look into this a little bit more, right? Now the second one involved actually a family-owned business. And I was involved in this investigation. And one of the key things that shocked me is this particular accountant is a very trusted staff of the executive chairman. And this particular accountant actually report to a CFO, right? A group CFO. So when we were doing the interview with the group CFO, and we said, how come she is given so much power, right, to do the payment, to write the check with erasable ink? To write a check with erasable ink, so much power, right? To receive bank statements, and she's very smart to alter the bank statements using technology. And with the high scanning machines today, you can actually produce a DBS or OCBC or UOB bank statements that exactly look like them, but all the numbers there are altered. She's very good at doing all this, right? How come you give her so much power? And she's only an accountant. And you have so many accountants. You have all these controls in place, segregation of duties, checks and balances. How come this particular person, you gave her so much power? You know what is the answer? She is 20 years in this company, and she is the trusted staff of the executive chairman. It is not my job as a CFO to question the trust that my executive chairman placed on her. Now, you got to understand this. It is not who you are. It's what we call the moral authority. Very powerful. If you rub shoulder well with the executive chairman, very powerful. Like Mr. David Jarrah, you may not be the executive chairman of SIAS, but people perceive you to be trusted by David Jarrah. What happened? All your controls in the world doesn't work anymore. So the point here is not how big or how small your charities are. I think you need to watch the people you are dealing with. And this thing about trusted staff, 20 years, not that we don't trust people, we do, but we do need to understand that people do change. And I learned this from Minister Teo Chee Hean many years ago when he talked about the civil servants. We can put them through all the tests, all the psychometric and personality tests, but people do change. And when people change, all right, we have to recognize that sometimes we are weak, we make mistakes, but the system must be able to detect this signs of behavior that is unusual and question. That's what we're talking about, the substance of internal control, not having more forms, more checklists. SingPost, one very good example. Recently, they made an announcement on the progress on their corporate governance. They now have a code of conduct for the directors, how the directors will behave. Now they have a code of conduct on the tenure policy for directors, not having too long, right? There should be healthy rotation. And they have a code of conduct for conflict of interest. So these are things that you will notice when things get wrong, then you start to take all this accountability and transparency seriously, but the damage to the reputation is done. Now you will notice that whatever I said just now actually happened in the charities. Right? You have, over here I show you dominant founder. Charity is a very unique business because you do need a dominant founder who are very passionate about the charitable cause to carry on with the activities. We recognize the contribution of the dominant founder. But there is one thing that we all understand and we were taught, that there's a difference between ambition and greed. Sometimes ambition, if not checked, can become greed. And greed is not about money, it's about power, it's about glory. So these are things that we need to learn, and we need to help dominant leaders stay on course of pursuing the ambitious, do good thing, and it doesn't cross the line, right, to fall into the space of greed. BC directors lacking commitments. These days, if you don't have time, don't be a director. All right, you don't know what you're getting into. All right, long-serving independent directors who are no longer independent. Checklist board chairman, right? Lack of matters. Now, there are many examples, and you will see, all right, we were looking at the charities lapses, and you will see these are the 5 areas. Chairman has no effective oversight on the activities of the CEO. Leave the CEOs to do what he wants, all right? And non-competitive bid to award contracts to related party. The conflict of interest is, I think, very serious. It's not just related party, but employees who are relatives, many. Passive and obedient board, misuse of funds raised, lack of independent audit committee, right? You see the same thing happen in the corporate world. You see the same thing, the lapses happen in the charity world. Now, McKinsey did a study recently on what is an effective board, and they point out 4 characteristics. The first one is broaden the scope, right? But when I say broaden the scope means board diversity. You need to have the right people from various disciplines to form your board. Right? You cannot have a pure accountant or pure professional services. You need to have a mix. Deepen commitment, you need to find time to attend board meetings, to discuss issues, to have meetings with the management. You need to clarify the responsibilities, and this is important, between the role of the chairman, the role of the CEO, the role of the treasurer. And you need to, in this whole process, create a healthy culture of constructive debate. Because if you do this well, you can promote a lot of trust. Okay? Now, the board do need to play a role in all these 5 areas. I won't go into this, but one very key area that I want to talk about is risk management. You see the proposed code for charities now bring in risk management. Now, risk management is, again, not about identifying the top 5 risks, top 10 risks, okay? Having a risk register. Risk management, if you look at the current thinking, is about building a culture. Building a culture where everybody is a risk owner, everybody look at how to mitigate the risk. And it involves mobilizing every one of your staff. Now, in the areas of risk management, we learn very painful lessons. Back in the late 90s, when risk management was taught, all the university students learned these 4 things about risk treatment. Avoid the risk, transfer the risk, mitigate the risk, accept the risk. Guess what? All of you do 2 things only. Avoid the risk, transfer the risk. And we have a big problem today. Everywhere in the world, everybody is looking for cover. How to avoid the risk, how to transfer the risk. Through insurance, right? Transfer the risk to subcontractors, press the subcontractors harder, get them to accept all these onerous legal terms. If you don't comply with this, I'll sue you until you bankrupt. This is not risk management. And this is the disaster of risk management. If you're looking at these 2, then don't do. Risk management has to evolve, getting everybody to own the risk and getting everybody to do their best to mitigate risk. So there's one thing that we must not learn from the corporate world, where we are, and many today are still like that, transferring the risk is not healthy. And the charities, especially the smaller charities, don't worry about this big concept about risk management. Actually, we work with the smaller charities. Some of them, their annual receipts are 50,000 and below. The board are very involved. They know exactly who are the people who are weak, and they actually spend time with them, deal with the risk, and move on. Right? There's no need to employ RSM to do a risk management exercise and transfer the risk to me. Yeah, it doesn't work this way, all right? This is something that my people help me prepare, and then say that you must have this pie, very nice chart. But I look at this, I ask myself, what do you mean? Governance committee. You ask charities to have more governance committee. Those smaller charities, how, right? Already very difficult to find volunteers, how to have more governance committee, right? Strong leaders with value system, something that is not tangible. Adopt multiple stakeholder perspective. Very high sounding words to impress. But I make it very simple for you, all right? No need to impress. If you really want to do good, do the simple thing. Watch out for the details, all right? Lead by example. You don't need committees. More committees means more risk transfer. Nobody owns the risk. You are the board of directors. Let's do it together. Own the risk. Own the risk, manage it. Make sure that you go for the details. Don't rely on people to look after the details for you. It's a disaster. Now, another area that I think it is important that we start to think about is there's a difference between the corporate world and the charities world. Now, in the corporate world, we want to grow big. We want to do more M&A, inorganic growth, right? But I think these days, corporate world also realize should we continue to chase to be number one? Right? Volkswagen want to be number one. They got the carbon emission scandal. Many years ago, Toyota also want to be number one. They also got into scandals. So everybody who wants to be number one doesn't seem to have a good ending. So my point to all the charities here is, don't worry whether you are number one or not. And don't worry whether you get an award or not. All right? So don't worry if you don't win an award tonight. All right? You are good. You are good. All right? So I think we have to ask ourselves why we exist. In fact, I find that in charities you have to work towards extinction. Why I say you have to work towards extinction? It's not about collecting more donations. I look at the charities report in 2015. I notice we have been very generous. In 2008, private individuals that do those tax-deductible donations was about $180 million. Last year, I'm not sure whether is it because of the 3 times tax deduction, it has grown to close to 500 million. This year we'll know the truth, whether you donate because you want to save tax or you donate because you really want to donate. There's a difference, right? But my view is I'm worried with many of these charities having fanciful fundraising campaigns, employing professional callers to call, all right? While I recognize the contribution from others, I think we should not overdo it. We should not try to build a war chest we don't know how to consume in our lifetime. We got to learn like Mark Zuckerberg give away. Don't own too much. Just have enough for your purpose and cause. And in charities, you don't have to be very complicated. If you believe in one good cause, stay focused on doing this good cause and stay focused to work towards achieving this good cause so that you work towards extinction. Right? I know there's a topic talking about reserve. I think we do need to ask ourselves all these questions. How much is enough? Today, we don't know how much is enough. And that's the scary part. We always want to own. We always want to have. But the future, in 10 years' time, your children is going to teach you, all right, I'm not going, dad and mom, I'm telling you now, I'm very experiencing from my young children. And they are going to tell you this, I'm not going to work so hard like you to own a car, to own more credit cards, to own more condominiums. I don't need all this. I want to do charities. I want to join NGOs. The world has changed. We're moving from an ownership economy to a sharing economy. And I think in fundraising, what I hope to see is a lot more charities pulling together their resources, especially the smaller ones, pulling together their resources to do fundraising together. Don't need to show off you are better in fundraising. There's no need to, all right? Do it for the good of a cause, all right? Share resources and learn how to pull resources together and share. It will go a long way, all right, to making sure that we work towards extinction. You know, if you work towards extinction, means you are working towards zero poverty, zero hardship, zero abandoned kids. These are the cause and the very existence of why we are here today, right? So let's work towards zero poverty, zero hardship, zero abandoned families, and you have to work towards extinction. Thank you very much.